Hello, my name is Oligarchy. I'm the curator for Tribute Arts and Films Gallery. We are here at Time of Redeemer exhibition, a collection by Mr. Onyema Offoedu Okeke. It's a politically inclined exhibition, trying to spell out the state of the nation and how we are in need of a redeemer. And we're waiting patiently for one that hasn't come yet.
My name is Onyema Offoedu Okeke, architect trained, but I have always been an artist all my life. So I think there's a natural affinity for both of them, so I can do them at the same time. The theme of the exhibition is titled Time of Redeemer, and taking the scope of the various different components and motives and symbols that was brought in to fit into the catalog. One notices the diversities, the way they fit in. You notice the automobiles, you notice the horses, you notice the humans, and then some abstractions.
I particularly like Onyema's works because they're vibrant. I love the colors. On a very good day, when you come in from work, you want something really vibrant and happy. So his works make me smile. I just love the fact that it's complicated and at the same time simple in theme. All the geometric patterns represents the complexity of life, but the colors throw light into the perfect disposition that you should be in. So it's telling in a lot of ways, as in the patterns are complicated, but the colors bring all the light and the sunny smile.
So when you look at the compositions of the work, I try as much as possible to interrogate the type of leadership that we have today. And based on what I have seen and what I've heard and what I've experienced, one can actually use the metaphor, a suitable metaphor, to capture the style of leadership and the type of leadership, the way they do things and where it must have come from. In trying to see so many different ways that I can aptly capture these particular parables of the way our headship, the political headship, has played over the years, I find something that's very interesting that fits in. Automobile. The automobile in the pictures are quite epochal, they're dated, they come from the colonial period. You understand? Quite nice when you talk about classic cars and the kind of architecture that is deployed to compose them. They're quite beautiful, beautiful artistic pieces. I'm talking about the cars itself. But when I use it as a metaphor to interrogate styles of leadership, what now happens is that I find something that is problematic. The refusal for innovation. You find out that the type of leadership that was prevalent in the 1960s seemed not to have changed scope, because it seems it's the same type of leadership, just like the classic cars of the 60s, that is still being utilized today. You understand? So that is one of the most important touch points that I try to bring. The lack of innovation in leadership, still the same old people, the colonial generation, and have problems with the opinions of the modern citizenry, the youths particularly. All right. Now you move about, then you notice where I utilized an automobile, but what oftentimes they call timeless stylistics of this automobile, the king of cars. That's the Rolls Royce. I found something very interesting about Rolls Royce, where you have a bit of a paradox of beauty and power. At the top level, where anybody says that he owns cars and he knows about cars And without the Rolls Royce, that means that you still have not really reached the apex of it. But then again, the car represents something when you talk about in terms of power. It is not a car you toy with because it has a very powerful engine, a Rolls Royce engine. But when it is brought within the scope of the political criticism, I choose to look at it as an oligarch, as a mark or mode of oligarchy.
I particularly like Free Your Mind because Nigeria, on a good day, is very complex. It's very untidy, if I can use the word. You go out every day, and when you come back home, all you want to do is just relax. And anytime I look at the painting, it just takes me to another place. Like I said, I love vibrant colors. I love the colors. So in the midst of all that geometric patterns, the complexity of life, you can actually close your eyes, throw your head back, and free your mind.
Then you move to the horses, has to do with the motion, it has to do with power, how power is managed, when it is moved from one place to the other. In other words, within a certain space of time, how destructive or constructive it can be. And then you notice people in several different postures, sitting and lying down. At one, I spoke about the lack of land. In other words, lack of root, lack of a place. This is it. And I titled it Restless, because you find humanity in the need of stability, and they can't find it. Then you look at, in some places where I used the metaphor of the marketplace. The marketplace, I try to relate with the economy. Where things are changed. But in Nigeria as a marketplace goes beyond the economy. It's a place where a lot of things are the currency. There's an exchange point in ideas, in power, in governance, in construction, and a whole lot of it. So then you look at this particular posture of a person carrying a bicycle on the head. I call it the Agitation of mobility. In this, I try to illustrate that despite the problem of leadership that we have in this place, the youth, that's a representative of a young man, the roots have the innate abilities to maneuver from one station to another. And that is why the metaphor of carriage of a head, I use that particular construction to show how the load can be a problem, and the way it connects with the head is now the interaction of the load and the head. In other words, the load and the mind, the dissection of the problem. I use it in several of my works over the years. So it's a head load hypothesis, whereby anything that touches the head and the head carries it, immediately there is an ignition, there is a particular spark of interrogation of that particular problem by the brain, the mind.
I've known Onyema for 20 years. I still remember like yesterday when I was chasing him around Lekki Phase 1. I used to stay at Lekki Phase 1. I loved his work so much because, it just makes me smile, and I wanted to work with him. So this is like a 20-year dream come true. This is our first exhibition together, and I hope there'll be many more.